I'm finally getting a chance to get into the hives. I haven't opened these hives since I closed them up last fall. Today I'm going to try to get through all 6 of the hives in my backyard. I figured while I'm doing this, grab the camera, take you along, and we'll see together how these colonies are doing. It is early March 2025 and it feels like it's been forever since I have made a video. This year has just taken off like a rocket in good ways, and I'm having trouble keeping up with the blessings. I have had great orders coming in, the Sodbuster shop, suburbansodbuster.com, and I appreciate all of you who have placed orders for swarm traps and everything else off of there. I've also been busy with more events so far this year. I just got back a week ago from the Homesteaders of Iowa Expo in Tajma, Iowa. That was fantastic. I'm getting ready to go to the Oklahoma State Beekeepers Association meeting. Then 2 weeks after that I have the Okie Homesteading Expo. So looking forward to all of those, and it's kept me very busy. I have some plans for some videos I want to make, and I'm going to get those out there. Today is a great opportunity to get back into it because we finally have some nice weather after a cold snap in February. I've been watching the entrances, of course, when the weather warms up, and what I've seen there has been great. The colonies in Tajma hive look like they're doing great. The Langstroth hive looks like it's doing good. The colony I have in the green hive, which is an insulated Layens hive, they look really active. The two I'm a little concerned about, one that I have in what I call Mom's hive, that's a small 12 frame box that's not insulated, and that colony seems a little less active coming out of winter, so we'll see how they're doing. The other colony that seems a little slow is the colony in my conversion hive, which is right behind me here. A little concerned about those, but they are still active. So let's get into it. I figure we'll get any bad news out of the way first. So I'm going to open up this 12 frame box, the one I call Mom's hive, and we'll see how things are going in here. Now, as I mentioned, this is an uninsulated hive. I did put this little sheet of foam insulation on top of the frames when I close these up for the winter to give a little more insulation above the bees. We just came out of a hard freeze. I mean, several days of really cold temperatures about a week ago, and now the bees, it's warming up. We're going to go through a little more cold weather, but I don't think it's going to get as severe. And the bees have been pretty active, and they've also been bringing in quite a bit of pollen, so that's been really good to see. Don't know if they're seeing much nectar yet, but a little early for that. So in that first frame we still got some honey at the top of the frame there, got some pollen in there, and a little honey on the other side as well. So still have some reserves in there. Now there is a little liquid nectar in the middle of that frame, so possibly they're bringing in a little bit on the other side too. And those cells don't look like they've been recently uncapped, so it's possible they're finding a little something somewhere. Next frame, got a little more honey on the corner of that one. And this hive being uninsulated, it is not surprising. I got some small hive beetles in there. That's not a great way to start the year. It always seems like this hive uses up more of their honey reserves over the winter being uninsulated. I do say they have some larvae in there. It's not all that warm today, so I'm not going to keep that frame out very long. This one still has quite a bit of honey at the top there. You can get it down there, you can see that honey at the top, so that's nice to see. We got some pollen in the middle there. You can see the population is not real strong here. March is the time of the year when most colonies starve out, if they're going to starve out over winter. This frame all the way down through there, you probably won't be able to see with the light. I'll kind of turn to, hopefully the light will hit off of that. There is wet nectar all throughout there. That is kind of unbelievable, but not a lot of bees on there. And these frames on the end here, there's hardly any bees over here, so I'm just going to close these up. Come back to this side. Starting out, opening this up, seeing the bees in there active and seeing some larvae, it all looked like really good signs, but this population is so low, I'm just not sure that we're going to make it. But I've been surprised before. We'll close them up and see how things go. So now we're here at the conversion hive, and as I recall, they weren't particularly strong going into winter. This hive always has roaches on top, more than my others. I don't know what it is about this one. Alright, looking down in here, I see a few dead bees on this end. And I did have some frames on this end. They're Langstroth frames that had some extra honey that may be useful for the bees for as we come into spring. Now this hive I can see right now has not come through winter as well as I would like. On the bottom I can see some wax cappings and some dead bees, which would almost be a sign of robbing. Yeah, there are quite a few bees down there. But they still have some honey here at the top of the frame. So I can tell they haven't been completely robbed out. Not much on the back side. These bees are working on something, so there must be some nectar or leftover honey in these cells. Yeah, we got dead bees in there. So these bees starved out in there. Did not have enough at the top of the frame, but they still got some honey over on this side. But don't know if we have enough of a viable colony here. We got quite a few small hive beetles in here. I hate to see that starting out the year. And then we got empty frame. More bees in there. So this hive just did not go into winter with enough resources to really get through. When I say the colony was kind of weak going into winter, they just hadn't really built out these frames very far. What they have here, they have honey stored up, but of course the bees don't, when they're in cluster, they don't move across frames, so they couldn't get to that. They got a little honey on there. Now that it's warmer, those bees that are left can get to that, but it doesn't help any for the rest of them. So it looks like we've lost this colony. There are some live bees, but I don't know that we have a queen in here, or if she's at the bottom in the pile of bees. So this one looks like it's going to be a loss. Well, let's take another look on this frame, see if we have a queen over here. Oh, there she is. So we do have a queen in here. So there's a possibility they could come back. So a rough winter, but we'll see if they can make a recovery. Because that queen is right there, and these bees haven't really spread out at all, I think I'm going to do a little housekeeping here. We'll pull out this empty frame, and I believe there's another empty one here. No, that has a little honey on it, but nothing on that side. I'm going to take this frame that has the honey on it and stick it in between where these bees are. Let them cluster on that frame and have plenty of resources for any cold weather coming up. And then we'll condense them down here. Those Layens frames typically have plenty of space to store honey if the bees store it. I don't believe I harvested any from this hive last year. I think they were just kind of a weaker hive last year. But that queen has a green marking, so I believe she was a new queen last year. What I often see from my hives is that first year they build up, or in this case not. And what I often see in the second year, even from, or especially from my disappointing colonies, is that then they kind of go crazy and become productive. So we'll see what happens with these. We know they have a queen, they have a chance of recovery. Kind of rearranging that honey hopefully will give them resources to get through any leftover cold this winter. We'll let them go and see how they do. Now we're going to look at Tajma hive, which for whatever reason has historically been my stronger colonies. Tajma hive, it's a big hive, but it is not insulated. It actually started out as a large Langstroth hive. It was made to hold frames the width of the Langstroth frames, but then after talking to Dr. Leo and seeing him work the Layens hives, I decided to convert it to a Layens hive, and so I built in basically a box in a box here. But what I didn't do, and I should have, just oversight, is I didn't insulate it. So it's, you know, an internal box with an airspace, and then the bigger box around that. So at least it has that airspace, provides a little benefit. So pulling this first frame, there is plenty of honey on this frame. This is just an end honey frame. I leave that in there. Frame of honey on each end of the brood frames. This next frame doesn't have anything much to it, but I left it in here for a purpose. I'll show you here in a second. So you can see there's really nothing on there. It's just a little bit of comb built out. But the reason that's on there is because last year, instead of building out this frame and building out the frame next to it, they built this frame that I'm getting ready to pull real thick. So we'll kind of move that frame down, let it be a honey frame this year, and maybe kind of clean it up and balance it out. But I left that little partial frame in there to give space so I wasn't crushing any of that comb. So you can see here, even this hive is uninsulated. Now we're getting into a pretty good population of bees and hive beetles. Hate that. But they still have tons of honey on here. Just look at that. Look at this, you know, so they not a whole lot of honey at the top, but all the way around the side. It's warmed up, the bees are active. They've got tons of pollen in there. I'm gonna have to do something aggressive about those hive beetles. But, oh, I was mentioning this other side. They got, let me see, if you see it in profile, you can kind of see how it's bumped out there, but they got that middle section all bumped out. That thing is probably, I don't know, about 2.5 inches thick from side to side. This next frame has pretty good coverage of bees on it, and it's still a fairly heavy frame. Lots of good strong honey band at the top of that, and lots of honey down the side. So kind of a beautiful frame, got lots of pollen in there, got some cat brood on there. So they are getting their start on raising brood. This other side with so many bees, I can't see into a lot of the cells. Again, we've got a lot of honey on there. Got honey down the side and at the top. And I don't see capped brood. It's not all that warm today, so I'm not going to worry about moving those bees out of the way. I want them to be able to keep that brood warm. Again, tons of bees on there, but also tons of honey. Not as much as the last frame, I guess. Quite a bit of capped brood on that frame. You may not be able to see it for all the bees that are on there, but underneath those bees, they've got pretty good capped brood. And on this other side, more capped brood, more honey. The small hive beetles are going to be the death of me. Probably the death of my colonies first. Here we got just frame after frame. Good coverage of bees on there. Big difference from what we saw in that last hive. Here we've got a lot of larvae. Not as much capped brood, but we've got younger brood on there. Haven't spotted my queen yet. I'm not going to take a lot of time searching for her. Still plenty of honey resources. Good thick layer of bees on there. So real happy with that one. Real happy with this hive in general. 2 more frames left in here, and we'll get through them pretty quick because we're seeing the same thing over and over. Actually, at this point, I know the bees have plenty of resources, know they're raising brood, and that's really, know they have a good population, and that's really all we need to know. That looks fantastic. Love it. Alright, I'm not even going to pull this last frame. We'll get them covered up and we'll check out the colony on the other end. So I got a frame in this open end that I left here at the end of, I pulled it out of the hive as just a little extra honey and left that over there. Bees haven't come across and touched that, it doesn't seem. This one has 4, 8, 9 frames, so they ended the year strong. Heavy frame there, plenty of honey at the top, more honey, more bees on this side, so looking good there. Plenty of bees on there, plenty of honey at the top, looking really nice. Lots of pollen in there. We got some wet nectar all throughout this frame. Don't know where they're getting it. Another frame full of bees. It's fairly light, tells me they've gone through some resources. They still have a band of honey at the top there. And I see my queen there. Queen is right there. Bees do not like me getting close. Alright, bees. So seeing more nectar there. I'm not seeing brood here, but we know our queen is there. Oh, well, I said that, and now I see some capped brood and larvae on this frame. So, and probably if I look close on that frame where the queen was, they probably have eggs there. So I think we can go ahead and close this hive up. We see a strong population of bees. We see lots of honey left. We see our queen active in there. As active as these bees are, I'm gonna take this frame that I pulled out last fall and just put it right back into the colony. So that's great to see. About what I was expecting based on what I saw at the entrance. You look at the entrances and a lot of times it'll kind of tell you what's going on inside the hive and whether there's concerns or not. What I saw at the entrances on these told me that there really wasn't much concern. I saw bees bringing in tons of pollen, I saw tons of activity, and what we see inside is consistent with that. So we'll cover these up and let them continue about their business. So this first frame, we got some honey on the side of the frame. Not a lot, patchy bits of honey here, but on the other side, it's basically full of honey. So plenty of resources there. Now I'm not seeing a lot of bees on here. This hive has been, the activity's been pretty good. Well, they only have 6 frames, so we know they were not as strong a colony going into winter as the colonies in Tajma hive. So we wouldn't expect to see that. Here's another heavy frame with lots of honey, and they got wet nectar in there too. So you may not see it, I got the sun at the wrong angle here, but lots of wet nectar in there, lots of pollen. Don't know what they're gathering. They're hitting something. Because we're seeing in this hive and some of the other how bees are backfilling some of these frames with nectar, we may see them running out of space for the queen to lay soon. I may need to expand these colonies pretty soon and watch for swarming and be ready to split. We're already in March, so swarm season isn't that far off relatively, but plenty of honey there. Got some more honey there and a lot more bees, so that looks pretty good. Lots of pollen in there. So this frame does not have as much honey in it. Also has some capped brood on it. It's nice to see. Start building up their population. More capped brood on this side. Not much honey, a little bit of honey and nectar on this side, not as much as on that last frame. Again, this next frame is also a little light, so there's not a ton of honey on there, but they do have some. They got some honey there at the top, kind of that arc of honey that I saw in the last frame. Don't see much brood on this, but these cells are larger. Looks like this was more drone brood on here. You can see on here a sign of how much pollen has been coming in. Me holding those frames horizontal, there's pollen grains all over here, kind of a milky cream colored. So they seem to be doing all right. Not as outstanding as in Tajma hive, but they were not as big to start. They have pretty good population. They do have brood. Didn't spot my queen, that's okay. And they have plenty of honey to get through the rest of winter. Like a lot of the other hives, the Langstroth hive has been very busy lately, so I'm very optimistic about what we're going to find here. These bees are in a single deep with a shallow super on top. The super was for the most part full of honey, probably about 90%, 80-90% going into winter. And then whatever they had in the deep. And then wrap them up with foam around all sides, and on top I put a box with 3 inches of insulation in it. So they had some insulation on the sides, more insulation above them. So here's my insulation. This is not fiberglass, this is rock wool, so it doesn't have the itch factor that fiberglass would, and it has about the same insulating value as sheep's wool. First frame, as I recall, the frames on the end didn't have much in them. This first frame certainly does not. It's pretty much empty. But second frame still has pretty good honey on there. On that side, this other side is pretty light. Next frame, more honey. Basically full. So I'm just going to move this box off and we'll see what we find down in the bottom box. The comb that's in here, this was a hive that I had cut out from a front porch pillar. And this colony that's in here is not that original colony. That was a few years ago, and I split that colony, but some of these frames are the original frames from that cutout. It's time to get rid of some of these, but I can see some of this comb is bumping out. There's a little bit of bridge comb, not bad. I do see gaps, but I can see, you know, some of the comb is kind of wavy, and that's consistent across frames. So I'll start from this end. I'll pull a frame out to make a gap, and then we'll work our way back. All right, this frame seems pretty light, so they don't have much honey left on here. Actually, they have more than I expected based on the feel, but so still got some honey there. More honey on this side, and I got some pollen on there. Not seeing any brood in there. Seeing one of those dang hive beetles. Nice big section of honey there, and plenty of bees on there. Also hive beetles. Nice coverage of bees, even better on that side. And they have some capped brood on there. You can hardly tell for all the bees that are on there. And I don't know if you can tell on camera, probably not very well. This comb is pretty wavy because, like I said, some of this comb was, at least some of these frames were comb that was cut out of that original cutout, and then I let the bees build comb from that. And they more or less followed the frame, but it's a little wavy as it goes. I don't mind. We're kind of in the population central here. Not as many bees over on this end. There's some pollen there, not really any honey. And well, this is interesting. They've got a queen cup here that is charged, meaning it has a larvae inside of it. So that's an interesting development. I'll be coming back to check on that. That is our fourth frame. Now, there's 3 here, but we took 1 out. Way too early. No drone brood in any of these hives. So even if they do make a queen there, she has little chance of getting mated. But if she supersedes the queen they have, that could be bad news for the colony. Now we're getting into where there's lower population. We'll see what's going on these frames. They're pretty light. That last frame didn't have a whole lot of weight to it at all. This doesn't hardly have any comb to it at all. That is crazy. They've like removed most all the wax on this frame. And it doesn't look like wax moth damage. It's just they chewed it up. Now we're getting into heavier frame. Few bees on there. With the exception of that capped brood and that 1 cup, I haven't really seen a whole lot of larvae, and if they are, you know, maybe something happened to their queen at some point here and they're trying to supersede her out of season. So some interesting things in this hive between that queen cup and that chewed up frame. Kind of a weird little box. Alright, this is, you can look how black that comb is. This comb's going to have to go out this year. That's some old stuff, and you can tell bees haven't really been on here much. They got some honey. They're actually storing some nectar, or at least there's some nectar down in these cells like we've seen on some of those other hives, but a little bit of mold on these cells down in the corner. The comb in the middle of this frame, I can't even really pick out what's what here anymore, but some of this would have been cut out from that colony, and they just kind of built around, and they got like a gap in between here. Built it the way they like it, and that's okay. Got a little more mold down at the bottom of this. That's some moisture down at the bottom there. Not too concerned about that. And while we're here, we'll go ahead and look at this last frame, because these are interesting. Again, that kind of matches that last one. Kind of ripped some of those cappings off moving these frames, but got some fun comb there. got a little more mold, and this was right up against the end wall. So got some condensation on that side wall, and I'm not too concerned about condensation on the walls as I would be condensation above the bees. So overall, their population looks pretty decent. Would have liked to see more brood, but some of those frames were pretty effectively covered, so it just may have been a matter of not being able to see. Although that queen cup that I saw does cause a little concern about what may be happening there. So again, I'll note that that'll be on our 4th frame. We'll come back at our next earliest opportunity and see what's happening with that. Overall, these inspections kind of showed what I would have expected to see based on the traffic at the entrance and based on how these colonies went into winter. The colonies that started out weak are still weak, but as of right now, we haven't seen a colony that's totally dead out. The mom's colony, the little 12 frame colony right behind me, they are a significant concern to me. Their population is so low, I'm really not sure what's going to happen there. The conversion hive, as we saw, it's also weak. They did have a pretty good die-off over winter. They went in with low reserves, but they do have a queen. I saw the queen in there, so they have a possibility of recovering. Colonies in Tajma hive and green hive, those look fantastic. The colony in this Langstroth hive looks good, but that queen cup is a little perplexing, so we'll keep an eye on that. I appreciate you coming along. I hope that your hives are doing well this spring. Go ahead and post in the comments. Let me know how your bees are doing this year. I do want to give a shout out to the members of my Patreon community. I really appreciate those who have given their support behind me. It's you know, a small monthly donation, but it really means a lot that you're willing to help stand and support what I'm doing with this channel. If you'd like to join that community, I'll put the link to the Patreon in the description. If you've enjoyed this video, you may like this video that Google has selected especially for you. Thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you next time.